What's up guys, welcome back to Fasterproms YouTube channel. I had a bunch of cars that I had to tune today and I had no idea what I was getting myself into when my friend brought in this. Alright, so Neil brought me this thing here, and I thought all along that it was kind of like a modded C5 when we were talking about it. I had no idea what we were getting into, but I was like, dang, that is a genuine stock car looking thing right there. And so apparently this is an AASA car, and you said it's a 2003, so tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah,
if you would.
I think when I told you it was an LS1, it probably threw you off. Basically what happened was AASA was one of the sanctioning bodies that ran a lot of the short tracks and smaller markets across the United States for many years. And when the cost of rebuilding engines and buying engines got out of control, GM approached the series and said, well, you know, how about we take our new LS1 platform, which is relatively inexpensive and highly reliable, and we create a spec engine. So they united with Lingenfelter and they came out with this.
Guys, I've been tuning LS1 since really the software was available. As soon as LS2 came out, I had the software, and I was trying to be at the top of the game for tuning it as early as it came out. And I can tell very early, I was like, oh, that's a 1998 box right there. So as soon as that came out, that was kind of what I cut my teeth on right there when the software just had hit. The software came out in about late 01, 02, and I was about 21 years old then, and I was like full-fledged. I had a couple years tuning under my belt, tuning EPROMs and tuning stuff like my dad's car, the Legend. You guys should check out some of that and some of the videos there. After that, this was really the hot ticket. This was cutting edge at the time, and it's so cool because I was like, this is what I'm currently doing, and they're making this a race series. I was like, this is my end. This is it. You know, this is so cool. And so this really brings me back. For the longest time, those boxes were totally locked and I couldn't get into them. All right, so you've been doing really good with this thing, and I had no idea how good you were doing with it, but tell us a little bit what you got going on and which kind of how you got this thing.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a fascinating story. So ASA folded in 2005, and all those cars were left out there. There was, I know there was one guy who had the V8 stock car series. He's down in Naples, Florida. His name is Lee, and he bought about 40 of these cars, and then he converted them to road race, and he was selling them like hotcakes. And because it's a two-frame car on a fiberglass, it has the perfect power to weight ratio that everybody's looking for. Yeah. And for road race, to convert them to road race was relatively inexpensive. The consumables are relatively inexpensive. I mean, buying tires for a Corvette and for a stock car, I mean, it's like it's comparing apples to oranges. So I picked this one up. That
weight right there is like, that's making me excited right there.
I was just doing track days with this at first, just having a ball, and then a friend of mine convinced me to join SCCA and go run in the GTA class with this car. First year, and we're first in points in Central Florida, first in points in the South Atlantic region of the United States. Awesome. Which is really cool, yeah, and it's all thanks to a great handling car with very mild power, but it's just a very forgiving car too to drive. At 2,800 pounds and with relatively cheap Hoosier tires, you can just toss them into the corners, they stick, and they go.
One of the things that we were talking about earlier was the fact that these were like round cars that have been converted, and they do it on the road course now. I mean, very much like a stock car. It's like, yes, if it's got good bones, you do little tweaks here and there, and the thing will just work.
That's it.
Have you done any crazy modifications, or is it mostly the way that you got it?
This is legal. I mean, you know, this was an all-original ASA touring engine, which was LS1. Right. You're going to tune it to make sure that the components match the tune and the new build now. Amen.
So that's what we're doing right now is the 243 heads and the LS6 intake manifold. You guys that are not so familiar with all that LS mumbo jumbo right there, that's basically an upgraded intake manifold that makes on average about 10 more horsepower. And the 243 heads make about 15 horsepower more. They got a little bit more compression. It's the native head and intake manifold that comes on the 01, 02, Z06. And really, a great time to be a proud GM guy, because that was like really when Corvette stuck it to the rest of the world, and they were like, we got something that's going to compete on a world level. And it was like, man, it made me proud to be a GM guy at that point. So yeah, we got some of those parts and components on this. So this thing is absolutely purebred, all business. I'm a huge fan of NACA ducts. We use that on some of our parts. This thing basically creates a low pressure and draws the air in, and you see them on race cars all the time. I mean, any place where you want to stick air, you stick a NACA duct in there and it'll pretty much draw it in. So this is pretty darn awesome. That basically feeds your helmet blower. Okay.
Actually,
it's down in there.
It works in two different parts. So when the car is running, you don't need to run the actual fan blower because, as you said, the air is being forced into the NACA duct. But if you're sitting on the grid and it's hot out there,
oh yeah,
you could turn on the little fan and it'll blow. Now, eventually the fan gets hot and then you're just getting hotter,
yeah.
So it's probably better to turn it off at that point.
That is interesting, the pedal right there too. I hadn't really noticed that. There's somebody else that might be a totally, like, oh, I deal with this all the time. I'd never really seen a roller pedal before. That's pretty cool. Hey, do you have any idea how many G's you pull or anything like that on any of the telemetry or anything like that?
I do have some video with some telemetry, 2.3, 2.4 G's on this thing, yeah.
That's impressive. Man, that is that's really impressive for that tire. And man, there's so much stuff that I want to learn. We're actually in the middle of going through my Miata right now and putting a wing on it. I do want to try and have a blade like that and be able to tweak.
The wings are really hard to fine tune.
Yeah.
Everybody that runs a wing, they're like, we were faster with the blade before. So it's one of those things that unless you're one of those aerodynamicists, yeah, and you have a wind tunnel and you can check it, it's really tough to fine tune that.
Oh yeah! As you got to do it like an airplane version. Yep. All right, so we got our power on. So we go ignition, fuel, we're good to go, right? Anything else?
And then the start is the top right.
This guy right here?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, sometimes with the dyno, the noise and the EMF, so that's the electronic magnetic frequency, and the air freaks out the dyno. So might be having that problem. We're going to try it out right now, see what she does. Oh man, slow processor. That is a wicked trans. Oh, the race car noises. Horsepower. Air fuel is not bad. It's a little lean early and then it gets a little richer there. So let's try it again. We'll get it hot and see what happens here. All right, 450 horse. Our torque is not reading right at the moment. It's got a lot of spark advance and it's going to be hard to pick up some more power, but we're going to, fight tooth and nail. We're going to try and get better throttle response. I'm going through this whole thing, trying to see if we can pick up little bits and pieces of power, just trying to optimize it all the way through. Now, part of the map was very, very lean. The other part of it looks absolutely fantastic. Now, this thing does not have working O2 sensors. We don't have O2 sensors in it, so I kind of have to tune it by feel and, well, by I got my O2 sensor in there, and I can kind of watch what it's doing, work on those trends. All right, so guys, if you ever do any sort of road coursing or anything like that, one of the things that I remember most distinctly was you're balancing yourself with your legs because of the G-forces. I was trying to save myself with my knees, and at the end of the day, I'd be like rubbed raw. Right. And I was just like, I'd always have that like scab over the next day, but this, it's made really, really well. So I really like the idea, and I think it's just a job well done. If you guys are ever doing that, that's a nice solid plate right there, and it'll do the job. Guys, I will tell you, when it comes to motorsports like this, heat management and being able to shed heat, putting heat on certain things that you do want and taking heat away from other things that you don't want, that is a major, major part of this game here. So being able to control your coolant temperature is very, very important. You know, being able to keep your intake air temperatures down is also extremely important. There's little things that you can do as far as shielding this and blocking off that, insulating this. You want the exhaust to be hot, you want the intake to be cool. So this has got some stuff that is done that is very, very well and tastefully modified. That's what it takes, guys. So I'm having some difficulties with the data logging. My data logger is kind of crapping out, and the tack lead was acting up, so I didn't have any frame of reference. We should have that solved this pull, and I will be able to make some strides with it. Air fuel is close. We're a little bit rich at the moment. We're kind of middle 12s air fuel. Let's up and make another pull here. Are you ready to make some power? Boogity, 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 boys, let's go racing. 93 degrees and 9:30 p.m. Welcome to Florida. Woo! That's surprisingly good torque.
Yeah.
So another thing that I want to illustrate, you guys, if you heard on any of our videos that we talk about the gearing. The gearing, you said you had 410s on this, okay? If this thing had a 342 gear ratio, this thing would probably put down another 20 some odd horsepower. It doesn't show the same on the dyno. I did spin it a little bit higher, and we have kind of crested, we have peaked. However, the torque is outstanding. 439 pound-feet of torque for 450 horsepower. That is really good for the size of this motor. I mean, that is, that's impressive. That's like everything's working out really, really well. I still need to add a tiny amount of fuel, so we're slightly lean right now. I wanted to do some back-to-back pulls to really show what the oil temperature does and see how it's going to behave, make sure it hasn't spark knocked. Didn't see any black puffs coming out the back, did you?
No.
Okay.
Very clean.
It's a balance. Now, guys, if this thing had a fast manifold and had 12-to-1 compression and had a smaller exhaust and all that, we wouldn't be able to run anywhere near the time you were running. So it's just illustrating that the package is working very well.
Nice.
So after 5,700, our torque is really coming down quite a bit right there. Neil and I were talking about just some of the basic pressures and controlling and basically how this is such a science. So let's talk about that. As the torque is dropping, we are not filling the cylinder as good, so the pressure is less. So this is our peak torque right there, all the way up until about 5,200. So 4,800 RPM to 5,200, we have a decent amount of timing. This curve needs to be the reciprocal or the opposite of the way that torque map looks. So basically, our torque is going up, has a hump, and then trails down. So in other words, this needs to go up, come down and then go back up, which it does. But as that torque is still dropping and dropping harder, so if we say, hey, look, at 5,600 RPM, we are making somewhere in the neighborhood of about 410 pound-feet of torque up there. So we could be able to run about the same amount of timing as we are running at about 3,700. However, after that, the torque drops beneath that. If the torque is dropping beneath that, we should be able to run more timing there. So this looks like a lot for an LS, but what that is telling me is that we should be able to run 30, 31 degrees at about 6,000, 6,400. Well, my theory, we have not seen any spark knock. Obviously we don't want to under racing condition, but we're gonna try and get a lot more aggressive with this and really see if we can pick up that top end. That's the only thing we're really lacking. Come on, power pickup. Let the freedom begin. It's like in the oil temp. We have a best of 400, almost 55 horsepower, 454, 439. Now the peak number didn't change much, but where we were falling off, we're now maintaining. Where that was 440, it was 453. So in some areas about a 10 to a 13 horsepower pickup by testing that theory. So again, where the pressure is dropping, the torque is dropping hard, throw some spark advance at it, and we'll bring it back up. Guys, if you've been watching, you know all about that. These are all good things. We're learning every pull. Hard-earned gains, man. Hard-earned gains. Tough to make some power in this thing, but we got a little bit. We got a little bit. And a little bit in a racing scenario can turn into a lot. All right, buddy. I think that's all she's going to make. I think we're maxed out. I need to take a look at the video, make sure it didn't knock. Watching and checking the exhaust is almost indisputable, but I am pretty sure we can roll it back. The previous one, we'll still be able to maintain our power without spark knocking, and that is really how we wrap up a pretty decent tune there. So,
good job.
All right, we'll pull it off. I really wish we could take her out and rip her on the street.
You can do it. I won't be there with you though.
Well, I am strapped in. Hey, it's like Lightning McQueen. He ain't got no headlights. My goodness, that's another thing. Might not make the most power on the street, but let me tell you, that pulled way stronger than 450 wheel horsepower. Like, that just The gearing works with that thing, and it's just the whole package, guys. I mean, that's all I can say is, like, you can't just look at the overall power and be like, ah, it's 450 horsepower. I would have never believed that it was 450 wheel horsepower had I just felt what I felt. That on a racetrack would be... I'm really glad that Neil brought that over and that I could be able to tune it. It's basically a budget NASCAR type setup. So guys, you can get into this very decent price. That's a retired ASA car, and you can run it on track days, and they have competitive classes for it. So check that junk out. That is something to be reckoned with. Oh girl, got a special place in my heart now. Hope you enjoy the next episode, because that was a hell of a lot of fun. Man, I'd love to see what that thing would be able to do with a 10,000 RPM LS base engine in there. That would be sick. Hell of a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed it. God bless you guys. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. That's a good boy. It's all wet. Norman, I'm thirsty. Norman, I'm thirsty. Go get it. Go get the water. Go get it, Norman. Oh, good boy. That's a good boy. Norman, give me. Good boy. That's a good boy. Yeah. Good boy.